Welcome, coin enthusiasts. In today's video, we're taking a fascinating look at the Lincoln Wheat Penny, a classic piece of American history that could be worth far more in exceptional condition. We'll explore its history, rare features, mint mark, condition, and realistic market values, and discover what makes high-grade wheat pennies so desirable to collectors. So stay with us, because your old penny might be hiding an unexpected story of value. The 1940 Lincoln Wheat Penny is an important early 1940s issue in the long-running Lincoln Cent series, but it is important to correct one common misconception at the outset. A 1940 Lincoln Wheat Penny is not a U.S. bicentennial coin. The bicentennial celebration occurred in 1976, while the 1940 cent was struck decades earlier. Nevertheless, the 1940 issue can be highly desirable when found in exceptional condition, with strong original red color, proof status, or an unusual mint state quality. For ordinary circulated examples, the coin is generally affordable, but exceptional certified pieces can bring substantially more. The 1940 Philadelphia cent had a huge mintage of 586,810,000, while Denver produced 81,390,000 and San Francisco produced 112,940,000. Philadelphia also struck 15,872 proofs. This enormous production means that the date itself is not an ultra-rarity, so claims that every 1940 penny is worth thousands or millions of dollars should be treated very cautiously. The real collector opportunity lies in condition, color designation, proof examples, and genuinely unusual errors or varieties. Historically, the 1940 Lincoln cent belongs to the Lincoln Wheat Reverse Series, which began in 1909 and continued through 1958. The coin was designed by Victor David Brenner, whose portrait of Abraham Lincoln appears on the obverse, while the reverse features a famous pair of wheat ears surrounding the inscriptions 1 cent and United States of America with E pluribus unum above. The 1940 issue appeared during an especially important period in American history, just before the United States entered World War II. The coin therefore represents the final years of the traditional bronze wheat cent before the dramatic wartime changes of 1943, when the mint produced zinc-coated steel cents to conserve copper for the war effort. The 1940 Philadelphia issue carries no mint mark, whereas Denver coins have a D and San Francisco coins have an S beneath the date. These three mint varieties are central to identifying the coin correctly and determining its potential value. Technically, the standard 1940 Lincoln cent is a classic bronze wheat penny with approximately 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, a diameter of about 19 millimeters, and a weight of approximately 3.11 grams. Its plain edge and traditional wheat reverse make it immediately recognizable to collectors. One of the most attractive characteristics is the preservation of the original copper-red surface. Professional grading services generally distinguish between brown BN, red-brown RB, and red RD coloration, and this distinction can have a major effect on value in high grades. A circulated coin normally develops darker brown coloration from age and environmental exposure, whereas an exceptionally preserved coin can retain much of its original bright reddish-orange appearance. On an elite example, collectors also examine strike quality, luster, surface marks, carbon spots, scratches, and overall eye appeal. These seemingly small differences can separate an ordinary collectible from a premium registry quality coin. Rarity is therefore more complicated than simply looking at the number of coins originally minted. The Philadelphia 1940 cent had by far the largest production, making ordinary examples plentiful today, while the Denver and San Francisco issues had considerably smaller mintages. However, 81.39 million Denver coins and 112.94 million San Francisco coins are still substantial numbers, so neither should automatically be described as an ultra-rare date. The true scarcity develops at the upper end of the grading scale. Millions of cents were circulated, scratched, cleaned, damaged, exposed to moisture, or otherwise lost their original appearance. Finding a 1940 cent with exceptional preservation, original red color, sharp details, and very few contact marks is much harder than finding a worn example. That is why two coins carrying exactly the same date and mint mark can have dramatically different values. When it comes to market value, Most 1940 wheat pennies are worth far less than the sensational prices sometimes claimed in online videos. Current published guides place typical circulated examples in the range of cents to a few dollars, depending on the mint mark and grade, while attractive uncirculated coins can move into the several dollar or higher range. For example, one current guide lists the 1940 Philadelphia, 1940D, and 1940S issues at roughly a few dollars in MS63, MS65, depending on color and variety. Another current valuation source gives the 1940D around $3.62 to $4.96 or more in MS condition, illustrating how dramatically ordinary mint state pieces differ from extraordinary specimens. Consequently, a realistic collector should think in terms of condition-based premiums rather than assuming a normal 1940 penny is automatically a fortune. The biggest jump in value can occur when a 1940 cent reaches the finest certified grades and retains exceptional red coloration. As an illustration of the importance of quality, PCGS auction records show a 1940 S. Lincoln cent graded MS67 red selling for $188 in 2017, while another MS67 red example sold for $156 in 2020. PCGS also recorded a population of certified MS67 red pieces, with additional examples graded higher, demonstrating the 1936 Lincoln wheat penny is a fascinating and historically important United States 1-cent coin, but it is worth making one clarification before discussing its value. The 1936 Lincoln cent is not a U.S. bicentennial coin. The American bicentennial issue was produced in 1975 to 1976, whereas the 1936 cent belongs to the classic Lincoln wheat reverse era. Nevertheless, a 1936 penny can be highly desirable, particularly when it survives an exceptional mint state condition, retains original red color, or possesses a genuine error or scarce variety. The coin is part of the famous Lincoln cent series that began in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and it remains popular because millions of collectors recognize the wheat reverse immediately. Although most circulated 1936 cents are relatively affordable, superior examples can command substantial premiums because collectors compete for coins with excellent preservation, sharp strikes, attractive luster, and high certified grades. The important lesson for anyone searching for a valuable 1936 penny is that the date alone does not make an ultra-rare coin. Condition, mint mark, variety, color, and authenticity are what can transform an ordinary example into a significantly more valuable collectible. Historically, the 1936 Lincoln cent was produced during the Great Depression, an extraordinary period in American economic history. The coin was struck at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, with Philadelphia examples carrying no mint mark, Denver examples carrying a D, and San Francisco examples carrying an S beneath the date. The Lincoln cent itself had already become an important part of American culture since its introduction in 1909, when the United States Mint replaced the Indian head cent with Victor David Brenner's celebrated Lincoln design. By 1936, the wheat cent had been circulating for more than a quarter century and had become an everyday representation of American commerce. The 1936 issue therefore provides collectors with a tangible connection to Depression-era America, when unemployment, industrial recovery, New Deal programs, and changing economic conditions shaped daily life. It also predates the major World War II composition change of 1943, when copper was temporarily removed from regular Lincoln cents. This historical setting adds an appealing story to the coin, even though the 1936 issue itself was not created to commemorate a special anniversary. The design of the 1936 wheat penny follows the classic format established by Victor David Brenner. On the obverse is a right-facing portrait of Abraham Lincoln, accompanied by the inscriptions, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and 1936. The reverse displays two wheat ears surrounding 1 cent and United States of America, with E pluribus unum positioned above. This wheat reverse is one of the most recognizable designs in American numismatics and remained in production until 1958. The standard 1936 cent is approximately 19 millimeters in diameter, weighs about 3.11 grams, and is composed primarily of copper, traditionally around 95% copper with the remainder tin and zinc. For collectors, the visual difference between an ordinary worn coin and a superb uncirculated specimen can be dramatic. A high-grade coin may show brilliant original luster, crisp lettering, strong wheat lines, and comparatively clean fields, while a heavily circulated specimen may have flattened hair details, worn lettering, scratches, and darkened surfaces. The rarity of the 1936 penny needs to be understood carefully because the issue had substantial production. Philadelphia struck approximately 309,632,000 cents. Denver produced approximately 40,620,000, and San Francisco produced approximately 29,130,000. These numbers mean that ordinary 1936 Lincoln cents are not inherently rare. However, the number of coins surviving today in exceptionally high grades with original red coloration is much smaller. Copper coins are particularly challenging because exposure to air, moisture, chemicals, and circulation can alter their original color and surfaces. Professional grading services generally classify Lincoln cents by color as brown BN, red-brown RB, or red RD, and this designation can have a significant influence on value. A coin that has technically survived with little wear but has lost its original red appearance may be worth considerably less than an equally graded coin retaining vibrant original red color. Thus, the true rarity of a 1936 cent often emerges at the upper end of the grading scale, rather than among ordinary circulated pieces. Market value varies considerably according to mint mark and condition. A normal circulated 1936 Philadelphia penny may be worth only a modest premium over face value, often roughly in the range of a few cents to perhaps $1 or more, depending on grade and eye appeal. Denver and San Francisco examples can bring higher prices in better circulated grades because their mintages were substantially smaller. Once the coin enters the uncirculated range, prices can rise into the several dollar to tens of dollars range, while attractive certified red examples in much higher grades can reach hundreds of dollars. The exact value depends heavily on the grading service, numerical grade, color designation, surface quality, and current collector demand. These ranges should be treated as realistic general guidance rather than guarantees, because the market changes and individual auction results can vary. A seller asking thousands of dollars for an ordinary circulated the 1950 D. Lincoln wheat penny is an interesting and collectible issue from a final decade of the classic wheat cent series, and can become particularly desirable when found in exceptional condition. One important clarification, however, is that the 1950 D. Lincoln cent is not a U.S. bicentennial coin. The American bicentennial coins were issued in 1975 and 1976, while the 1950 D cent was struck at the Denver Mint in 1950. The 1950 D is nevertheless historically significant because it belongs to the post-World War II era, when the traditional bronze Lincoln cent continued to circulate throughout the United States. Its value is primarily determined by condition, color, strike quality, mint state preservation, and unusual varieties or errors, rather than by the date alone. Most circulated examples are relatively inexpensive, but attractive uncirculated pieces can command meaningful premiums, and exceptionally preserved certified red examples can be worth considerably more. For collectors, the 1950 D is especially appealing because it combines accessible entry point into wheat penny collecting with the possibility of finding a genuinely premium quality coin. The historical story behind the 1950 D begins at the Denver Mint, where the D mint mark identifies coins produced there. The Lincoln cent had been introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and by 1950 Victor David Brenner's design had become one of the most familiar images in American coinage. The 1950 D was produced only a few years after World War II, during a period when the United States was experiencing major economic and social changes. America was entering the early Cold War era. Manufacturing was expanding, and consumer life was changing rapidly. The coin, therefore, represents a fascinating period between the wartime years and the economic growth of the 1950s. It was not issued to commemorate a particular historical event, but its place in the wheat cent series gives it considerable historical appeal. Collectors who assemble complete date and mint sets often need a 1950 D, making demand relatively steady among Lincoln cent specialists. The physical design of the 1950 D follows a familiar wheat cent format created by Victor David Brenner. The obverse shows Abraham Lincoln facing right, with "In God We Trust" above his portrait, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1950 on the right. A small D mint mark appears beneath the date, identifying the Denver production facility. The reverse displays two wheat stalks framing 1 cent, and "United States of America" with "E pluribus unum" above. The coin measures approximately 19 millimeters across, weighs approximately 3.11 grams, and is composed of the traditional bronze alloy used for Lincoln cents of this period, approximately 95% copper, with the remainder primarily tin and zinc. One of the most attractive characteristics for collectors is the coin's original surface quality. A well-preserved 1950 D can display vibrant copper-red luster, sharp lettering, clean fields, and strong detail in Lincoln's portrait and the wheat ears. Although the 1950 D had a substantial mintage of approximately 334,950,000 pieces, the existence of hundreds of millions of coins does not mean that every grade is equally common today. Most examples entered circulation, where they accumulated scratches, dents, discoloration, and wear. Copper also changes color naturally with age and environmental exposure. This makes high-grade examples with original red RD coloration substantially more desirable than ordinary brown circulated pieces. Professional grading companies classify Lincoln cents according to their color as brown, red-brown, or red, and this designation can have a major effect on the market. A lightly worn brown 1950 D may be inexpensive, while a sharply struck, fully red, high-grade example can command a substantial premium. The scarcity therefore exists primarily in the upper condition levels, rather than in the basic date and mint combination. In the ordinary collector market, a circulated 1950 D wheat penny is generally worth only a modest premium, often around 10 cents to under $1, depending on condition and current market demand. Better circulated examples may bring somewhat more, while attractive about uncirculated pieces can move into the dollar range. The major difference appears once the coin enters certified mint state grades. Depending on grade and color, an MS-60, MS-63 example might typically sell for several dollars, while MS-64 and MS-65 examples can reach approximately $10 to $50 or more, with particularly attractive red specimens potentially commanding higher prices. These figures are general market ranges rather than guaranteed valuations. Because coin prices fluctuate according to grade, IPL, certification, and auction demand. A dealer's asking price should never be confused with confirmed market value. For potentially valuable 1950 D, recent realized auction prices for coins with the same grade and color designation provide a much better benchmark. The greatest premiums are reserved for exceptional examples that survive at the highest certified grades. A 1950 DMS 65 red with attractive luster, minimal marks, strong strike quality, and clean surfaces can be much more desirable than an ordinary uncirculated coin. At still higher grades, the population of surviving pieces becomes progressively smaller, and registry set collectors may compete aggressively for the finest known examples. The 1952 D. Lincoln Wheat Penny is a classic United States 1-cent issue from the final years of the Wheat Reverse series, and it can become especially desirable when found in exceptional condition. One important clarification is necessary. The 1952 D. Lincoln cent is not a U.S. bicentennial coin. The bicentennial circulating commemoratives were produced in 1975 to 1976, while the 1952 D was struck more than 2 decades earlier. Nevertheless, the 1952 D has genuine numismatic appeal, because it represents post-war American coinage and is collected by enthusiasts building Lincoln wheat cent date and mint sets. The Denver Mint produced approximately 57,873,000 examples, considerably fewer than some other Lincoln cents of the period. While the date is not an extreme rarity in circulated grades, high-quality examples with attractive original surfaces, strong strikes, and especially red RD color can command substantial premiums. Its real collecting story is therefore one of condition rarity, where preservation becomes increasingly difficult as the grade rises. The 1952 D was produced during an interesting period in American history. The United States was still experiencing the economic and social changes that followed World War II, while the Korean War was underway and the early Cold War was shaping American life. The coin was struck at the Denver Mint, identified by the small d beneath the date. It belongs to the Lincoln Wheat Cent series that began in 1909, when the United States introduced Victor David Brenner's Lincoln portrait to commemorate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 1952, the wheat reverse had already been used for more than 40 years, making the 1952 D part of a mature and historically important coin series. The issue was not created to commemorate a particular event, but it circulated during a pivotal era when American manufacturing, consumer culture, and the post-war economy were rapidly expanding. That historical connection gives the 1952 D additional appeal to collectors who appreciate coins as small records of everyday American history. The physical characteristics of the 1952 D follow the traditional Lincoln Wheat Cent design. The obverse features Abraham Lincoln facing right. Within God we trust above his portrait, liberty to the left, and the date 1952 to the right. Directly beneath the date is the D mint mark, confirming its Denver origin. The reverse carries 2 wheat ears around the inscriptions 1 cent and United States of America, while E pluribus unum appears above. The coin measures approximately 19 millimeters in diameter, weighs about 3.11 grams, and uses a traditional bronze composition of roughly 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. What makes a superb 1952 D particularly attractive is the preservation of this classic design. On a high-grade coin, Lincoln's hair and facial details can remain sharp, the wheat ears can display strong separation, and the fields can retain original mint luster without the scratches, stains, or carbon spots commonly found on circulated copper coins. Although the 1952 D's mintage of about 57.9 million is considerably lower than many other Lincoln Cent issues, it is important not to confuse a lower mintage with absolute rarity. Millions of 1952 D cents were produced, and surviving circulated examples can still be found. The real scarcity becomes much more apparent in the higher grades. Copper coins are particularly vulnerable to environmental changes, and many pieces have darkened from their original orange-red appearance or developed spots and surface problems. Professional grading services therefore distinguish between brown BN, red-brown RB, and red RD examples. This color designation can make an enormous difference in the value of a high-grade wheat penny. A worn brown 1952 D may be worth only a small amount, while a sharply struck, original red specimen in a superior certified grade can be considerably more valuable. Collectors competing for registry-quality coins can be particularly interested in the finest surviving examples. In terms of realistic market value, the majority of circulated 1952 D wheat pennies are not worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Typical circulated pieces generally trade for modest premiums, often around 10 cents to perhaps $1 or a few dollars, depending on condition and market. Uncirculated examples can move into the several dollar range, with better MS grades becoming progressively more expensive. Published price guides commonly place ordinary uncirculated 1952 D cents at relatively modest levels, while premium red examples can rise substantially as the grade increases. For a collector, a reasonable broad expectation might be several dollars for lower mint state examples, roughly $10 to $50 or more for attractive higher grade pieces, and potentially hundreds of dollars for exceptional certified red specimens. These are approximate ranges, not guaranteed prices. The actual market value depends on the exact grade, color designation, eye appeal, certification, and whether there is strong competition for that particular specimen. The greatest premiums occur when a 1952 D reaches the upper levels of the grading scale. A coin graded MS65 red, for example, must possess far better preservation than an ordinary uncirculated coin. Even tiny contact marks, spots, discoloration, or weakness in the strike can prevent a coin from achieving a higher grade. At the highest grades, collectors may be interested